Well, welcome. Appreciate you joining us again. My name is Bob Wyatt.
And I'm Todd Larson.
Yeah, and we're just talking to you again about the Ultidaic prophecies, and we thought we'd change it up a little bit today and talk about some current events. We've had a lot of folks that have brought this up in other forums, and that's the use of AI in writing. And we wanted to talk a little bit about our philosophy, talk about how AI may or may not have affected our writing in the Ultidaic prophecies, and talk about some of the ethics behind it, and just dive into that a little bit. So, without further ado, Todd, I'll let you start us off. And I think first we wanted to talk about our use of AI or lack thereof.
Yeah, so uh, I've I think we've both been pretty interested in uh, artificial intelligence's growth over the
Yeah.
last, even before ChatGPT came out. I think OpenAI's announcement of ChatGPT 3
Hmm.
sort of caught the world by storm. But you and I have been interested in AI, not even generative AI as a writing tool, just the topic generally, the science of it, and its implications for society and the economy for many years prior to this
Yeah, for
coming out.
decades,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. And when ChatGPT came on the scene and sort of caught everyone's imaginations, and the media was reporting, and it started affecting schools, and how are we going to teach students who can generate papers in seconds? How do schools deal with this, either resisting it or incorporating it? And we've seen in the news layoffs in a number of fields in
Yeah.
large numbers because of AI being able to replace people who either do coding or data entry or all kinds of things. And one of the things that's been very controversial recently, let's say in the last year or two, is AI's impacts or potential or threat in creative fields. So we had the SAG, Screen Actors Guild, strike,
Yep.
where they were very concerned about getting their contract to require the studios to not use AI to replace writers.
Hmm.
Well, there was the writers' strike separately, and then the SAG also said, "Hey, we don't want you using our images or our likeness, our voices, to use AI
Right.
to create artificially generated images in movies, um, audiobooks, whatever." And this is a percolating topic broadly in our culture, in the court systems, as cases are starting to make their way through. So we're going to dive
Yeah.
into all of that, but we're going to do it through a lens of how's it impacting us? How are we approaching personally our approach to AI? Now, before,
Well, and I
go
think it's
ahead.
interesting too, because I really thought we had plenty of time. Um, when I first got interested in AI, I knew some of the capabilities that it would have someday, but I knew that we were decades away from reaching that point. Um, you know, I rough draft really well. I can get 8 to 10,000 words a day sometimes. Rough drafting. I felt like it was gonna it would take a lot for AI to get to the point where it can be as efficient. And we all knew that you could tell the difference between something that was written with AI and something that wasn't. Only what I thought would take 30 years to get to took about 7.5. I mean, it they just made leaps forward with the technology. And I think anybody who believes today that you can easily tell the difference between something written by AI and something written by a person, they're deluding themselves. I think that it has gotten so good at mimicking what the input that it receives that it can be very difficult to tell. And so I thought we had more time to figure this out, and I've realized that's not the case. We're already where we were worried about getting. Um, and I just, with my own way of thinking, I just had planned on taking a little bit more time, being a little bit more deliberate as we approach this problem, and that's not practical.
Yeah. So let's talk for a moment about what we've done so far, because
Yeah.
honestly, the short answer is we haven't used it at all.
Yep.
Look up to this point, and I've played with it. I, have a ChatGPT account. There are a lot of AI tools
Well,
that are available.
yeah.
I've played with a few of them. The one I've played with most extensively is ChatGPT. Currently, we're
Mhm.
on version 4.0, and it's super impressive. Um, one of the thing that there are other platforms like Claude, for example, that most people feel is a better a creative writing AI tool than certainly than
Right.
ChatGPT. It's much more Claude is much more structured towards assisting with creative writing tasks, and there are others, Jasper and etc.
Yep.
We're not going to get into the differences between writing tools. We're going to stay very
No.
conceptual here. I've played with them. I've used them to see how they work in either generating news stories, like write me the first 1,000 words or 500 words of a fantasy novel that has these elements in it, and see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
I think most people, and we'll get into the ethics in a moment, but again, just to talk about where we are personally with it so far, I think a lot of people
Hmm.
say it's really good for generating ideas. Like, give me 10 ideas for a fantasy novel or a horror novel or
Right.
whatever, a romantasy that has these elements in it. Give me, 2 sentences, 10 different versions of an idea. So, and it's really quite amazing at being able to rapidly spit out lots of ideas. If you're running into writer's block,
Oh. Oh, sure.
brainstorming with AI, brilliant. Now, again, we're not going to talk ethics for the moment, whether someone should be using AI, but just in terms of what it can do, where the technology is currently at, it's really good for that. Just sitting
Well,
down,
I think it's important too to say, when we say we have not used it in our writing, we have not used it to help develop our writing, develop our story, to do that. Have we used it in research? Yes, I think almost everyone has. And the line gets blurred between AI and search engines
yep,
so much today that I think all of us, when we are trying to figure out, okay, you know I'm just looking it up from a world building standpoint. Would this tree be the kind of tree that would survive in this kind of climate
right,
that I'm describing? Okay, well, I'm going to go to a search engine, and I'm going to try to look it up and find out where all of that's fine. But if I think that I'm not using AI for that kind of stuff, I'm mistaken.
yeah,
Certainly, it gets used in research on a regular basis, but it has not, and we have no plans to use it in generating the novel, generating the prose, in the actual writing of the novels and the series.
okay. So, and it may be helpful just very briefly to do a little bit of definitional work here, because
Sure.
take Grammarly for example, or
Yeah.
any of your uh, email tools out there that use generative AI to
Yep.
predictive AI to set to give you like a
To
soft
offer a
prompt.
suggestion.
Yeah, like this
Yeah.
text is coming up, and you can just hit tab or whatever to accept it because, oh, that sounds good, or have Grammarly as an AI tool come in and make suggestions on how to, I want to
Yeah.
make.
Like, don't use so many interrobangs.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
there
and
is,
it understands general rules of grammar, but
right.
it can read context and recognize that this doesn't make sense, this isn't clear. And
But
that's more than just grammar rules.
it can also do tone. Like, this appears
Yeah.
to be a professional work email and you're using rather casual slang or whatever. Would you like to tighten this up? Would you like to make it more succinct? Would you, whatever. So you could, like in Grammarly, you can give tonal preferences for a particular email, or
Yes.
this sounds very professional and rigid, but you're writing it to a group of friends. Would you like to make this sound a little more casual or whatever? And so
is that a form of AI to you?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
I think it has to be.
So yes. For purposes of this discussion, I think what we're primarily going to have in mind when we talk AI, and correct me if you disagree, but I think what we mostly mean is you give AI a prompt of, let's say, 100 words ish, and it spits out thousands of words in a novel form, right? Creative writing, prose, story, creates
almost
the story,
as if
creates
you're
the
using
characters.
it to generate your rough draft.
Correct.
And I have heard of authors. I don't know any authors that are doing this, but I have heard of authors, on YouTube, as much as you can trust anything on the internet.
I've
heard
seen
of authors that
forums where
generate.
You go to Reddit or anywhere, and there are authors saying, "I use AI, and this is how I use it. I use it to generate drafts." Right. So there are definitely people using AI to create books, and in the last year, we've seen a proliferation of novels being produced and thrown on online to by people who are not writers, never wanted to be writers, but they just want to create books. Now, AI has been really good, and the people who you usually see videos like on Facebook or commercials saying, "Hey, here's how you can use AI to generate a book and start generating they call it passive revenue," right? Those are almost always nonfiction books. How to create a how-to on how to train your dog, or how to whatever. And AI is really good, especially at those nonfiction kind of books on any subject.
But AI has gotten so much better on the creative side of things.
It is.
The speed. I have seen demonstrations that people have done that are remarkable.
Amazing.
At how it can put together a cohesive story, or it can look at your story and say, hey, this is a plot hole. This is something that you could do to fix this. This is a logical inconsistency in your writing, which is remarkable. So it's just amazing what it can
using
do.
AI as an analysis tool, almost like a beta reader / editor, right, to do a developmental edit. That's where an editor would read your story and say, you've got plot holes. You started a storyline and then you just dropped it. You never finished that storyline with this character or whatever, like those missing pieces. There are really good AI tools available now, and they're only that's another thing we're going to talk about, is the speed at which this is changing, because it's going to affect the trajectory of our whole discussion. But so using it as an editor tool, a beta reader feedback tool for your writing, all of those things are already amazing, and AI is just in its infancy at this point. It's just going to get better and better. So those are all interesting things. I think you and I, our view is closely aligned, that we have no problem using AI tools to help with editing, spell checking, all of those kind of functions. Where we, and probably most people, spend most of their time being concerned is in the creative side of thing, actually generating the ideas themselves, generating the prose, generating plot and character development, all coming from the AI itself. And people have been making arguments that AI can predict text, but it doesn't understand human psychology. It doesn't have emotional depth. It can't create stories that have deep meaning and connection for humans. I think that's just a matter of the development of the technology. It will be able to do that as well as any human in short order. And I mean, by short order, I mean 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I think now, while it may not do that on the first attempt with AI, I've seen demonstrations where they can give it prompts to tighten up the script and tighten up those ideas and to iron out those areas
Yeah.
where it would be otherwise deficient. So I agree that it's not perfect in one pass, but could somebody in theory generate content and have it pass as their own? Yeah, we're already there.
Sure.
Would it be good? I have my doubts whether it would be good or whether it would just appear as mediocre,
So,
average, or generic.
so that's now. What
But
about in 5 years? The
yeah,
technology
but
is
it wouldn't shock me in 5 years if at a first draft it's able to come up with something that's cohesive, that's logical, that seems creative.
yeah.
Because that's what they're programming it to do, and
So
it's very efficient at what its purpose is. So as they get more purpose-driven AI, they'll get AI that's designed to do this. The movie industry and other industries are moving this direction.
sure.
And yeah, it
Music,
causes
music
concern, I
industry.
think, for most of us that are in there. Yeah, same thing with music.
Like I've heard,
We see it with art.
I've
So the
heard
creative
music
side
pieces that are
Mhm.
write me a new piece of music in the style of Schubert or the style of Beethoven
Right.
or whatever, and it can generate amazing pieces of music that you as a non-expert, but as someone fairly well versed in classical music, I wouldn't have been able to tell that it wasn't composed,
Yep.
an original composition by the artist in
If you had
question.
told me this was a different piece of work by that author, and it would just seem like one I hadn't heard before.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's already remarkable.
it's so, and again, the rate at which this is changing is exponential. It's just going to get
Yeah.
better and better. And
I just think we're further along than people think we are.
that's true.
And when
We're already
we look
very
at
far
things
along.
and say, I think we're 10 years away from it, I have learned that my ability to guess how far away we are is vastly overrated by my own brain. And when I think we're 10 years away, we may already be there.
Oh yeah.
And I just haven't realized it.
Yeah, I absolutely think that. And just for a moment, I'd like to take this out a little bit to talk not about writing specifically, but about AI and where society's going more generally, I think. And then let's zoom back in for a moment, because I think there's going to be some issues that are easier to get our heads wrapped around globally with this issue.
Sure.
But then have it, what we're going to be doing. So, and also there may be some difference of opinion between you and me, but I know there's a difference of opinion between myself and a lot of people that I talk to about this. Many of whom probably aren't as versed in AI as I am, but there are even experts within the AI field who would disagree with the position that I hold, but I share it with a lot of, I think, other people in the AI space, but certainly not unanimously. But what I mean, let me be very concrete. I think we're headed in, again, 5 to 10 years at the latest, where we're going to reach what is often referred to in AI space as the singularity, which is when we have artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, not a specific AI program like a large language model that can generate text or images or whatever from text, but actually a general intelligence that functions the way human intelligence functions, which is you can apply reasoning and logic and what consciousness does across, or at least what intelligence does across multiple disciplines, multiple problem types, and solve problems. That sort of general AI doesn't publicly exist right now. We have a lot of specialized SAI, specialized artificial intelligence, where some people question whether we'll ever get to general AI. I am convinced. I fall on the side that we absolutely will get there, and the question is, and there will reach a point where general artificial intelligence surpasses human capability. And that point is the singularity, and I think the singularity is like 5 to 10 years away, right? And at the most. So, the question is, let's assume for the sake of argument that happens. What will that mean for humanity, for society, for the economy? What will that mean if we have general AI, super intelligent entities, whatever, AIs that surpass human capabilities? There's a lot of possibilities. Where do you see this going?
There are, and I know there's a lot of fear mongering, and there's a lot of legitimate concern as well. Will it take mass jobs? Certainly has the potential. I have questions as to whether that will be the case, or will the jobs just shift and change to other things? And I think that's more likely. And I know we've had this conversation before. I still maintain that whoever figures out what to do with labor going forward in a new era,
you mean human labor?
Physical labor, yeah, human labor with people. That's who will be the next ruling class. I think is the wrong term.
So let me be.
But those will be the ones that really engineer society going
forward. So let me be a little bit more clear about what I think you mean, because I think you're using a little bit of shorthand. And so let me be a little bit more clear.
Possibly.
So there's the possibility that if artificial intelligence can replace something on the order of half, 70%, 80%, 90%, 100% of human labor, then what do you do with everyone who doesn't have a job? What does society look like? What does an economy look like? And I think what you're suggesting is that when we have AI that can do the job of the vast majority of people in the world, and that the majority of labor that was previously filled by humans is now filled by artificial intelligence and robotics, whoever can figure out what to do with humans, once we are in a world where human labor isn't necessary to fill the roles that it has up to this point in human history,
as we know it. Yep.
That what will people what will they spend their time doing? And the person who can figure out what to do with humans.
I don't have any doubt that we will figure out what to do with people. I don't think we will decide, well, we're just useless and give up. It'll be the innovators, and I don't have that answer. But the people that come up with that answer will be the people that shape our society moving forward. And I look at it from a standpoint of just like with the population explosion in the 70s. I grew up in the 70s. It was pretty common knowledge that we were going to have overpopulation. We were going to exceed our ability to make food. We wouldn't have enough, and that overpopulation would lead to mass starvation. Well, that would be true if society didn't change. But the variable that they weren't accounting for is innovation. We have new ways that we farm. We've increased technology to be able to keep up with our growing society. So overpopulation isn't the problem that they thought it was. There's plenty of other problems that come along with it. But because we've been able to innovate and come up with new ideas, we've solved those problems. This will be one of those things where I don't know what it's going to take, what that will look like, but we will be able to solve this problem at some point in the future. And those that solve that problem are going to be the ones that really shape our society.
Okay, but so this is maybe where you and I start to diverge a little bit in our thinking. And I promise we'll bring this back to writing in a minute in our books. But I don't disagree that humanity is going to have to adjust to the, we will
Yeah.
adjust. Our greatest feature from an evolutionary standpoint is our ability to adapt, right? Like we are great adapters.
I agree.
And the problem is we've never shared a planet with other, I'm going to call it a life form because it's practically a life form. We may as well consider it that. We're going to have,
if it passes the Turing test, it's difficult to
So
distinguish from any other traditional form of life.
Where there are other life forms on the planet that are smarter, faster, more adaptable, do more of the work, don't tire, don't have our limitations, where we are no longer the dominant life form on the planet, and that arguably now there's some AI experts who predict a future of abundance where AI generates so much, so many excess resources that food, housing, all the basic necessities of life are basically provided for all of humanity for free. That right. And then the question is, in a state of abundance where everything's handed out for free, what will be the purpose of existence, and what will society look like? How will people organize themselves?
And that gets into a whole different conversation.
I think those are very interesting and complex questions that could be a whole separate video. I think the point is that what most people talk about in that kind of a future, I mean, there are much more grim versions of what a future with super intelligent AI would look like, that are, we're enslaved to the robots or whatever, or those who control the robots. I'm way less worried about that future. I just don't think it's a realistic possibility or probability. I don't think there's any reason for it to play out that way that I can imagine, because there's just no need to enslave humanity. The AI is a way better slave, right? No. So,
well, and why would it bother with that?
Yeah, well, exactly. Its own purposes would, like, there's just no reason for it. But anyway, so
but I think it's a valid point to say that when we look at, okay, what does that look like? That might be one of the things that AI is better at figuring out is what to do with all of us people.
Yeah,
it may be able to come up with those solutions that we don't see today because we've been able to increase that technology to be able to problem solve.
I agree, but so most experts that I've heard, the ones at least who contemplate and talk about a future of abundance, almost always talk about, and even people who aren't experts in this field, when they try to imagine that, most people talk about, well, we will do we'll do whatever we want, essentially, which is either spend all of our time in pursuing gratification, pleasure, and whatever form that takes, or creativity, artistry, poetry, writing, painting, sculpting, whatever form that takes. I suspect
the very things we're training AI on now.
Well, and so this gets back. So this is where we're coming back to is, even if you assume a future where AI can do everything for us, most people say, in that future, what I want to do is be creative on my own. I don't want to create because I'm trying to sell books and make money so I can pay my rent. If my rent's already paid for, my food's already paid for, and I have no need for money or resources because it's all given to me for free. Well, then I'm free to write literally whatever I want, and there's no purpose in having AI create it for me, because the temptation to use AI is so that you can write something more sellable or faster.
Right. But it also could, to put it in our book terms, it could introduce an era of Uranite influence. It could be that there are all these people that want to be creative for the sake of being creative.
Right. Or people who just want to consume human created art for the sake of.
The problem is if we have trained AI to be able to create works of art that can surpass our ability to do it ourselves, which I I doubt. I don't think that's the case because to
Ever?
me it's still limited.
In
I
50
don't
years,
know.
100 years, 200 years, you don't think AI will ever get to the point that it can create art faster and better than humans?
Much faster, better than humans. It learns from humans. It will be
Not for
able to
long.
build on the. It will be able to build on its own thinking,
Yeah.
but I don't know that it will ever be tremendously better than what human capacity has. The difference is I am not Shakespeare, and if every AI becomes a Shakespeare,
Right.
then I won't be able to reach that level. So you'll have a bunch of creatives that are going to do their best and be outshined by AI. But there will be also a market for that human connection, and I think
Uh,
that's legitimate.
that
That there will be those that don't want AI generated stuff. I question whether you'll be able to tell the difference.
I,
However, that's my concern.
I agree.
Give me
So,
just a second, Todd.
yeah.
All right, we can just keep
Okay.
going. I'll have Keaton cut that out, but something popped up on my computer, and I was afraid it was cutting out the
Got it.
or it would cut out the audio.
Okay. So the issue, I think, from my perspective, is uh, if all they care about is their own enjoyment of whatever the
Yeah,
product is, and they don't care whether it's human made or AI made, then humans will never compete with AI. I mean, we're going to get to that point
correct.
very quickly. So
Yeah,
uh, unless you value for the sake of its own whatever meaning, its own ethical meaning, maybe, or aesthetic meaning, the fact that it was made by a human, humans will not be able to compete with AI for very long. Like we're reaching the point of obsolescence in the labor market, I believe, and even in the creative
yeah,
labor market. So
and I think we're seeing that already, and we have seen it in the ability to create and manufacture items that are far beyond the craftsmanship of doing everything by hand.
sure,
But there's still a market for a handmade item.
okay. So this gets me to the second point
Yeah.
on this branch. So there are those who will value it, and we sort of have this utopic future of abundance vision that some
Right.
futurists talk about. There's another vision of the future where, and most people like to refer to this as the idiocracy future that we sometimes appear to be in way more rapidly,
Yeah. Careening towards.
or there already,
Yeah.
is the future where the and I'm not going to talk about intelligence because in idiocracy everyone's IQ is like dropped to 80 or whatever. Uh,
You mean in the movie?
in the movie
Or
Idiocracy,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I leaving aside the degeneration of humanity's intelligence and assuming that we stay roughly where we're at currently, um, I still think so that there were two visions of a dystopian future. One painted by oh my gosh, I've got Orwell stuck in my head. 1984
Orwell.
Orwell, not Orville.
Yeah.
Orwell in 1984, or
Yeah.
Huxley in
And then
Brave New World.
Huxley. Yeah.
Right. And so Huxley's version,
Well, and I think everybody was worried about Orwell's
they
version
were,
and going down that road.
eh,
I think Huxley's proved a little bit more prescient.
or they both could be existing at the same time, and
Yes.
the Orwellian future is much better hidden behind a mask of Huxleyan entertainment.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think we're still potentially in an authoritarian controlled environment, but they do a really good job of hiding it, masking it behind a Huxleyan mask facade.
Yeah. I probably worry less about that authoritarian side of things, although I acknowledge that's certainly a risk.
I
But
I think
the machinery already in place that goes down that the Huxley route of the Brave New World, of pacifying
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I think that definitely breeds an environment that would allow authoritarian rule to come in without people realizing
They
it's
do
there.
it through covert
Yeah,
psyops manipulation behind the scenes. Uh, they don't do it overtly where we can see them. They don't try to
yeah,
control everyone's behavior. They just pacify us with endless entertainment. And so uh, and so we're slowly tracing our way back to the writing issue. So in a future where people where their appetites are satisfied with, like, let's take TikTok or Instagram or whatever, YouTube Shorts,
uh-huh.
short clips, scrolling, doom scrolling. Lots of people do it. I do it sometimes. It's a huge
Yeah,
waste of time. Um, there's increasing research about its deleterious effects on teenagers who get sucked into online social media world with these things. It can affect
yeah,
shorten attention spans and condition our appetites for material that we consume to where we want relatively crass, base, um, shallow, and really high dopamine hitting things
yes.
that are,
Something that'll get our attention now, hold it very briefly,
and then
do
we're on to
something
the next
that'll
thing.
cause that hit of dopamine and let us move on.
So that's a big section of the population, I think, is susceptible to
I'd like
that.
to point out this kind of long form uh, conversation that we're putting out now,
Is the
not really
antidote.
designed. Well, maybe it's the antidote, but it's certainly
not designed to fit in well with,
that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So as consumer tastes continue to become dominated by these high dopamine, short attention span, soundbite type things, that I think the ability for AI to satisfy those kind of things, it just exponentially increases. Long form,
yeah.
maybe will take AI a little bit longer, but even then, I don't think so. And I'm going to
Well,
use some
and I
example
think a
from
lot of our metrics are designed to encourage that, as we were able to see
True.
how long somebody, how often they click on something, how long they stay on something. AI is able to learn from that and say, okay, well, at what point did the most people leave? Where did I lose people? How can I keep people longer? And they'll see what works and what doesn't. So I think it's designed to only increase that the clickbaity
Yeah,
appeal that a lot of things have today.
I agree. We have another problem in the world,
Mhm.
which, and I'm going to use the movie TV
I'm glad we
industry.
only have two.
we which is seasons of shows right now take a really
Yeah,
long time to produce. And so you end up going years in between seasons of shows. Whereas before, you would end a season in the spring, and then you'd get reruns over the summer when we were kids in the 70s,
right.
80s.
And then in the fall
And
would
then
be
the
the
fall
next
would be
season.
the season premiere. And they had a very short time. Now, like, I'm watching Andor, which I absolutely love, season 2.
Yeah,
Season 1 ended 3 or 4 years ago, right? And
yeah, during COVID.
during COVID, and they've been working on it for the intervening few years, but this is not an exception. It's the norm. It's becoming the norm, where you have these long gaps between seasons, and you lose people's interest. And so
Yeah,
because we don't need to get into all the reasons why it takes a long time in between, but the time gap between releasing seasons of a TV show or books in a book series, it has
mm-hmm.
been growing a lot. And famously, George R. R. Martin in A Song of Ice and Fire has been a decade or more. Winds of Winter, just,
Yeah,
and Patrick Rothfuss in the Kingkiller Chronicles, he hasn't come out
yep,
with book 3 in over a decade, and readers are very frustrated and turned off substantially by this huge gap. Now, what some authors have done, and where the industry has been going a lot, is to go to much shorter books, 80,000 words, 100,000 words. Yeah. And so, with few exceptions, you're just like Brandon Sanderson, who's just maybe he's an AI, but he, unless you are one of the once in a generation prolific creatives, most creatives struggle, I would say, to produce these huge, epic, high quality masterpieces rapidly. And this is where AI, the temptation to AI becomes so strong in the creative space, is if AI can speed up my creative process in whatever way it can do that, so that I can satisfy the demand. And once I've got readers hooked, I can feed into that demand as long as it lasts. And the more content I can generate and more quickly I can generate it, the happier they'll be. Even if the quality potentially suffers, most people are willing to forgive a little bit of quality suffering in exchange for speed and volume.
Right. And that's the temptation. I mean, a lot of people are looking at it and just they realize I can put something out very quickly. I can satisfy that hunger for it now, rather than risk losing some of their audience by taking their time with it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, there's sort of a split in the industry, the publishing industry, over whether you should write to market. This means when you see what a market trend is, like when Twilight became a thing and vampire romance stories were hot, people were like, write to that. Like, and there were a bunch of knockoff stories. I mean, you could argue whether Stephanie Myers herself was a bit of a knockoff story. I think she deserves credit for hitting something that was relatively original. I mean, Anne Rice before her had,
Yeah.
Anyway,
both of them were phenomenal at what they did at the time.
But then people were like, I'm going to write something similar to that because there's a demand. Harry Potter, the school, young orphan kid goes to a school that teaches magic. Now, then there were just 100 knockoffs of magic school stories, right? People, that's writing to market. People who want to write to market, I mean, you can argue whether or not it's a good idea, but people are tempted to write to market because that's where everyone's like, oh, I really love this. I want more of the same. You try to ride that wave. AI can help you get your idea or generate ideas in that much more quickly. So for publishers or
so you
creatives,
don't miss those market trends.
That's right. Is another big temptation. And so all of these issues, and honestly, there's one more, which is, so one of my, a couple of my kids are into anime and, manga, that kind of thing. And there are series that are put out that are so long. There is so much material, and they spit it out so rapidly. It's been going for a long time, and there's obviously some famous ones
for many years, and they just come out with new chapters and everything
all the time. There are books written in China, especially in Chinese. This happens a lot, although there's lit RPG and different genres that are in English as well, but that do this, but where they'll produce a chapter a day online. So you can be reading 5-10 books, stories at the same time, and they spit out a 5-page chapter once a day, and you just get to read it. And if you're a voracious reader, right? Because I was talking about the sort of idiocracy future where people's tastes have been so dumbed down, so satiated with short form content that they don't have the appetite for long form content. But for those who do have an appetite for it, they have, some people have such a voracious appetite for reading, even when the translation from Chinese to English is relatively poor because they just don't take the time to edit it. the
but
speed and the frequency and the how
yeah,
much it comes out, how much volume there
the
is.
market still appreciates getting the content, even if it's at a lower quality,
Right.
because they're getting it faster and getting more of it.
So
You
with
know,
AI,
yeah, and
if when AI gets to the point, because it will, if it's not already there, when AI gets to the point that it can generate that kind of content that maybe is
yeah,
slightly poorer quality than what a human could create in 2 years, but it can generate it every hour of every day, create as much content as any person could ever possibly want. Okay,
yeah, and tailored to your
and
life.
tailored to your taste. So that's another thing that I was going to get to is so we talk about AI potentially taking human jobs, filling human creative roles, but on the demand side, I think AI, a fascinating aspect that I don't hear very many people talk about is, I think the future that we're going to see is just like with streaming services right now, where you can just switch to whatever show you want to watch. Oh, I feel like I'm in the mood for this. Television used to be, you had a few channels and you just sit down and watch whatever they put
Right.
on, suffer through the commercials, whatever. But now, and I'm going to switch to restaurants for a minute because I really like this analogy. Restaurants, you used to go into, and I'm going to say fast food in particular, you used to go in and you had, items 1 through 10. You could order a number 1 or a number 5 or a number 7, and then you just got that meal.
Right.
When Subway came out, it was revolutionary because they didn't have it pre-made and you just picked the item. You got to pick every topping that you wanted to go in or not. It was fully customizable. And that customizable menu option went to Mexican food with Chipotle, where they just have an assembly line and you just go through and pick what you want. It's in pizza with, whatever, Pyology or Blaze or, a number of them out there. It's happening more and more. And in our entertainment, I think we're going to be getting this more and more as well, where I want to customize the entertainment that I consume, and AI will be able to instantly generate. You tell it what kind of a movie or a story or whatever that you want, and it will create it for you on the spot. Now, what we lose a little bit is the phenomenon of being joined with other humans who are all appreciating the same piece of media.
Yes, and that's actually where I was going to go with it.
But
if they can make it to where what you're watching matches what your friends are watching, well, then it can become
when you can share
the experience that you would share.
And then
but if it's just tailored to you, that might be awesome, but it also likely would lose meaning because you cannot take it out of your own experience. And I think that's the downfall of that side, is it becomes completely a solo experience. There may be people that prefer it that way. In fact, I think there are people that now would prefer it that way.
I think we're getting a more
population needs a shared experience.
But we're getting a more fragmented society. We are having atomization of society happen so rapidly right now. It's a crisis, and I think you hear the crisis of loneliness is a common phrase that we hear talked about. Yep. I do agree. It's a really big problem. This rise of technology that enables us to become more and more isolated, more and more self-focused, rather than building connection with each other. I think humanity is rapidly losing its ability to connect and be bonded to each other. Anywhere where people have access to enough content that they can watch new things that they've never seen before 24/7. There's already that much content available for people to just consume all day, every day, without stop, without ever interacting with another human. And I think we're just seeing this atomization happen. I don't know what the end of that road is, but AI stepping into that space where people already are more than happy. I watched a video today by a guy who was saying that he was talking to other men, single dating scene men, and he
Mm-hmm.
said, "Look, you're not competing anymore against other men in the marketplace for the attention of whatever woman you're trying to date. What she's thinking is, my choice is either being with this guy who chews too loudly or breathes too heavily or talks about things I'm not interested in. I could either be spending my time with him, or I could be by myself with a weighted blanket, giving myself a nice facial treatment, or
Yep.
whatever. I could be watching my favorite show, sipping a glass of wine, whatever. The competition is no longer between men for a single woman, or multiple men for a woman's attention.
Or vice
From the
versa.
perspective of the woman, it is a man competing against all of the non-human alternatives that she has, that she may very well be tempted to prefer. And this is happening across the board to everybody. And when we have AI that can step into that space and just generate whatever that person wants to consume,
it has the potential to enhance that
greatly exacerbate
that obstacle.
Okay, so let's turn it back now to talking about where you and I fall into this rapidly evolving future.
And how we would apply it to our profession, our work.
Well, and us in particular. So I feel the temptation, the hope that there will be AI tools that will allow me to speed up our work, because I dread the idea that we're going to have years in between our books. We are going to have years in between our books. There is no way to avoid it. We cannot write faster than that. We have to have full daytime jobs. I mean, unless we become, even Brandon Sanderson, I guess if he applied himself to a single series, he could probably pump out something in a year or so.
Yeah, but he has the remarkable ability to put out stuff far faster than I think I could.
But the quality of what we're trying to do, the depth that we're trying to write with in our story is complex, and it's going to take us a couple of years to write every book. There's just no way around that.
And that means you're looking at a decade and a half for the series to come out, which is
right.
It's a long time to hold attention. It really is.
It really is. So I feel very powerfully the temptation to use AI to speed up that process. I worry about what we might lose in that process, mostly in the form of quality and being able to get my ideas out. I know you have other concerns other than purely the pragmatic question of, could we produce the same quality? But just really quickly,
the ethics behind it.
We'll turn to that. We'll turn to that.
Yeah.
So the issue for me primarily is, if I could be relatively certain that using AI would produce in whatever, a tenth of the time, the same quality of product that I could produce writing it without AI, I would have no qualms about using AI myself. Now, I know you feel differently about using AI in that way.
Yeah, to some extent I do.
So why?
Yeah, and that gets into the ethics of it, and I think that it's a little complicated, and I need to acknowledge there's a logical inconsistency with the way I am viewing AI, and specifically for writing. I don't have a problem with authors using AI, but I would prefer that they would be transparent about it. If a book was generated by AI and I knew that and I didn't mind, great. But if you're looking for that, that handmade aspect, and you're not getting that, I think it's a little disingenuous to package it as if it was handmade. And so I look at it from that standpoint too. The other thing ethically behind that is the way AI generates text. It has consumed all of these other works, all of this.
You're
this
talking
large
particularly
database.
for large language model AIs like ChatGPT.
Exactly. The type that would need to generate the creative text that you would be prompting it to create.
Well, we might be moving beyond
write
LLM based AI models very quickly to where
it's possible.
We have network learning, artificial brain,
But for right
based.
now, I do think it's a little bit tricky because what you're doing is you're using other artists or other creatives' works of art to help teach the AI how to write, how to construct a story, how to develop prose, and then you're putting it out there. But that's not entirely your work. Even if you said, "Hey, write it in the style of The Storm
But
Beneath the
but
Glass,"
let me ask you. So how is that any
that's
different than what a human
that's
does?
taking our text, it's teaching AI how to use it, but it's also learning from all of the other authors that have come before us that have paved the way. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with the use of other works, especially against without any uh, without any compensation or without any acknowledgement of those other works that have gone before. So if I've got somebody who is looking at, for instance, if an author said, "Hey, I like what I'm developing," but they wanted to feed it into AI and said, "I'd like it to be more like Stephen King's writing." Well, then it's learning from Stephen King's writing and it's developing your voice to match Stephen King's more.
Yeah,
That's not your voice. So to me, that's where the ethics become a
sure.
little bit questionable.
Okay,
Not a little
but
bit. I'm very uncomfortable with it.
yeah, and I'm going to repeat this. So for you didn't hear me because I had a slight technical issue, but so I'm going to repeat the
Oh,
question. How is that any different than what a human does? Right? Like any person, you and I writing, we write.
yep,
We've been formed by having read other authors. We read Robert
correct.
Jordan. We were very heavily influenced by Jordan or by Tolkien or whoever. Right? Lots of writers. You and I
Yep.
are
All of us have been
we
shaped
have
by
been
what's
trained
come
how to
before us.
write by what we've read from other people.
Mhm.
Why is it any different if an AI does it versus a human? It is exactly the same process.
Yeah, I know that you feel that way. I feel very
What
strongly that
what why
it is a different process,
why? What's the
partly
rational
because
basis?
it is still coming from one person and their experiences, whereas AI is just generating it um, over a conglomeration of other people's experiences. We are not just a collection of all of the other experiences. I'm not just a collection of the Robert Jordans, the Patrick Rothfusses, the Martins of the world. I'm also adding my own work and thoughts into it. This is just the collection,
So
and it is
so
also an
so,
unpaid collection.
so if
So I've bought all of those works. I consumed all of those works. Would I feel better about AI if they had gone out and compensated every author that they used to teach their AI? I think that ethically they'd be on better ground, but they haven't done that, and I don't foresee a future where they are going to do that. And to be honest with you, I don't even see a future where they're going to need to do
but I mean,
that.
you could take a person who's never bought a book in their life. They've read everything online or at a library or whatever, right? Like
It's possible, yeah. But what you just described, if it goes to the library, the author does get compensation for that. If
they
it
got
goes
compensated the
online,
first time when the library bought it.
yes.
So if if the library has if you have access to everything the library has and you read everything that the library puts out,
Hmm.
and you train your AI on if every AI in the world gets trained off of a
Yeah.
library that makes it accessible to every AI, it's the exact same thing as everyone in the world reading from a library, right? So I think that is a very minor issue. It's not minor to the authors whose revenue is being impacted, but when it comes to the question of is it ethical for AI to for authors to use AI to write, I don't
Hmm.
see any rational reason why AI is any different than a human when it comes to the what has gone into giving us the capability of writing. Now you say experience. I say the human experience that shapes our how we output from what's gone in. And maybe you can make that argument with the current LLM based models. I think AI will not be LLM based models for very long. I think AI technology is
No,
going to rapidly surpass that, and we will not.
I think it is surpassing it already.
Yeah. So
but I also think that it would have never gotten to where it could surpass it without passing
sure,
through that period.
But let's say whatever it is, 5-10 years from now, we have an AI that is not an LLM, that is a super intelligent general artificial intelligence. The thing that we talked about earlier is coming. When that comes, and it can write books, and it's an artificial intelligence. And let's say it's even conscious. We don't know what consciousness is scientifically yet.
Right. But I don't think it's important to get into that.
When that happens,
at this stage in the conversation,
and it can be creative. Any problem with using it at that point? Does it change the ethics at that point for you?
Not tremendously.
Why?
The other question I would have is, what's the difference between that and plagiarism? If you change a few things that AI has given you, have you significantly changed it? Have you transformed it? Is it transformative? I think that I would defer to you on legal questions, of course, but I would debate whether or not that's transformative. And I think that from my standpoint, to me, there's a big difference between using Grammarly to make small changes and using AI to generate the narrative itself.
Yeah, but
now, again, I think that there's no problem with it if someone were to basically say this book was generated through AI and through my work.
So
great.
So
but then I know where it comes from, and I know the work that had gone into putting it together.
So let's be clear.
I know that other texts were used in the making of this.
Okay, so
of this book.
So partially, your ethical concern is with passing off work as fully human, when in fact it was partially generated or substantially generated using artificial intelligence. That discrepancy between what you're claiming the product is and what it actually is sounds like a false advertising type dilemma. But you don't have any.
I think it is false advertising.
But do you also? So you don't have a problem. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, if a person uses AI to generate a complete story and then says, I used AI substantially in the creation of this story, you don't see an ethical problem with that. If people want to buy an AI generated story, you're like, totally fine.
I do think that the only ethical dilemma you have there is what other works were used in the creation of that story. Under a language learning model, it's a very different that's a very different answer than what AI will be in the future. And so I think we're going to get to the point where it's accepted. I know that it has come up, and we've talked about it before, the difference between a ghostwriter and AI. And if AI is your ghostwriter, is that a problem? I do think ghostwriters are unethical too, but it's an unethical that we've chosen to accept as a society.
Well, if we've chosen to accept it, is it? I mean, that gets
I still think it's unethical. But I think it's funny because I think ghostwriters, we do accept it under certain circumstances. If it's a celebrity and it's their experience, then we're okay with that being a ghostwriter. But if it was just a celebrity, but they didn't write the book, somebody else wrote it, and they're selling off a piece of fiction, I think more people are uncomfortable with that type of a ghostwriter. And then it becomes very similar to what we're looking at with AI. If you didn't generate that book or that story, you just had a vague idea. And because you had name recognition, if Brandon Sanderson wanted to put out more works and had AI generate it and put his name on it, or had his staff write it and just signed that it was his name, I think we would be uncomfortable with, not that I'm saying Brandon Sanderson has ever done anything like that.
I've suspected sometimes.
All four Brandon Sandersons are phenomenal writers.
Either that or he's cloning himself or something. There's no way that guy writes
exactly. but that's my point is if it was his staff and he was passing it off as him, that
So
would be a scandal.
so this is
And
the
to me
Milli
that's how
Vanilli
it is with
problem,
AI as well.
right? So this is a way back reference
Mhm.
that maybe many of our listeners that maybe someday listeners won't have any idea what we're talking about. But in the '90s, there was a band, a duo called Milli Vanilli, and
Yes, yeah, perfect example.
they were all the rage. They were very good
They were
looking
really good.
men. Yeah, they were great dancers. They made great music videos. Their performances were very well received. They won Best New Artist of the Year, a Grammy, if I remember correctly. I mean, they
Yep.
were the thing. And it turns out they never sang any of the songs. They were two male model dancers who
Yeah.
could lip sync well, and other people were making the
They
music,
had
and
ghostwriters.
they were entirely, it was all made up. It was just a big group of people who
Yeah.
were making a phenomenon. And when people found out, Milli Vanilli fell into disgrace. I personally was like, who cares? Like, I don't know what the big deal is. If I like the music and I enjoy dancing to it and whatever, I really don't care how it was produced or how they made the entertainment content, the product that I'm consuming. If I like it, who cares? Like, I just didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't share with everyone else's outrage, but that was a huge scandal, and I think it gets to mostly to the point that you're is it's
Yep.
lying, it's deception, it's false advertising, and you
Right.
have a problem with false advertising. But ethically,
No, and I think that Milli Vanilli would have been very different if they said this is the face of the group, but there are people behind it. I don't know if you're familiar with Gorillaz,
yeah, the
the
gorillas,
band.
yeah,
Yeah, they they don't they're behind the scenes. All you see is their animated side. I mean, we know who they are now,
Hidden Citizens
but it
does
was
the
very
same thing.
yeah, exactly. And again, I think that they're okay with it, and the public does not have any outcry over it
Right,
because they're transparent about
they're
it.
transparent. Yeah,
Milli Vanilli failed because they weren't transparent, and it appeared to be deception.
yeah. So for our listeners and readers, rest assured that if we ever do end up just caving and deciding to use AI, we will at a minimum be transparent about it. Now, what I will say is, I'm not going to disclose if I'm using a program like Grammarly to check my spelling in the
No,
book. I will use it, and
I will
so
promise I am using
yeah,
spell
I
check
promise we are using AI to that extent. But to generate any of the content,
and in research.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, it will be a part of our lives, and we will use administrative assistant tools and the rest of it. But um, what I will say is we already know currently the whole arc of all the characters in all 7 books that are
Right.
going to be in the series. We don't need AI to generate the ideas. We've spent years developing all of that and the world building, the rest of it. We're at a point now where I think, don't largely need the AI, and we have each other to get past writer block or those kind of
Mhm.
issues. Will I ever use AI if I'm having a hard time getting a chapter started to like write the first page of this chapter for me? This is what it needs to have just to like get me past some hang up that I'm having. Maybe I'll use AI to write a first page of a chapter that I'm having a hard time starting. I don't know. But what I don't think we will ever do, and if we ever changed, we would disclose it, is use AI to generate substantial portions of our writing without
Yeah.
telling anyone.
And on that note, if it becomes the industry norm that that other authors are going that route, and that most series have books coming out every 6 months, that is the reason why our series is spaced out at 2.5 years between books, because we have no plans on doing that. And obviously if that changed, we would certainly acknowledge that,
Yeah.
but we have no plans whatsoever to go down that road.
And I think,
and in fact, I would be more comfortable staying on our present course and being at a slower pace than others, because I think our books, a little bit heavier and denser material, and I think it's worth the wait.
Yeah. And I'll end on this. Well, I think this is where we'll end it.
Yeah.
For us as creators ourselves, we always dreamed that one day we could be successful enough for this to become our full-time jobs. I think at this point we're likely for the likely trajectory is that if our books take off and become successful, that's likely to happen about the time that we're retiring anyway. And so for us this is really far more about a creative endeavor, and putting and the enjoyment, the fulfillment that we get from creating the product ourselves, rather than I need to write enough books that I can make a living. That's not what this is for us. It probably won't be anytime soon, and we'll probably, like I said, if we do become successful, it's likely to coincide with retirement anyway. So I think, unlike maybe younger writers, we don't have as much financial incentive to make that switch, because really this is our passion project from a creative standpoint. And of course, we'd love large-scale success. It wouldn't be honest to say otherwise, but
the passion is about.
But the passion it really is
books,
that it really is
creating the scenes and the characters ourselves, and using AI as a crutch to do that takes out some of that enjoyment
for us.
Takes out some of the creative process for us.
Yeah, and I think we're not interested in doing that. And maybe we're just old dinosaurs, and
That's very possible.
Other people will find ways to get as much enjoyment integrating AI more than we will into their writing process. I think up and coming writers almost certainly will do that. I just think it's inevitable. They'll probably do it more easily or more quickly than we will. I just think we're very unlikely to go that route anytime soon.
Yeah, and it may get to the point like ghostwriters where it's just accepted and not that big a deal.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet, and I don't know if we'll ever get there.
Yeah. So
for us, that's our choice.
In the meantime, if you think that we're wrong about anything, have a different opinion about anything, let us know. If you want us to talk about other topics, drop a comment, shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you about anything. And until next time, keep enjoying the adventure.
Take care, everyone.